welcome to Crimes Through Time, a weekly snapshot of crime history. In the shadow of World War II, as bombs fell across Britain and the nation fought for survival, a different kind of darkness descended upon the small community of Waterloo near Liverpool. A military blockhouse, built to protect, became the site of unimaginable horror. On the 2nd of November 1940, 15-year-old Mary Hagen left her home on a simple errand: to buy the evening newspaper and cigarette papers for her father. She would never return. Within days, a soldier named Samuel Morgan was arrested for her murder. Just 6 months later, he would walk to the gallows at Walton Jail, maintaining his innocence to the end. But was justice truly served? The case that shook wartime Britain hinged on a single blood-stained bandage and a confession that some believed was coerced. Waterloo in 1940 was a community transformed by war. Blockhouses, small concrete military posts, dotted the landscape. Air raid wardens patrolled the streets, ensuring no light escaped to guide enemy bombers. Children carried gas masks to school, and families spent nights in Anderson shelters when the sirens wailed. Mary Hagen was a bright spark in these dark times. 5 years earlier, she'd won a scholarship to Seafield Convent in Crosby, where she was one of the most promising pupils. Her father, James, worked as a shipping clerk, and her mother, Elizabeth, kept their modest home at 15 Brookside Avenue. Her 11-year-old brother, John, looked up to his big sister. Neighbours described her as quiet and home-loving. A girl seemed untouched by the chaos of war. At 6:45 p.m, Mary left home. The blackout had officially started at 6:08, but there was still enough light to navigate the familiar streets. Her journey would take her past a railway bridge where a military blockhouse stood guard, one of many defensive positions manned by the Home Guard. To understand the events that unfolded that evening on the 2nd of November, we need to step back and trace the movements of our key figure, Samuel Morgan. Samuel, a soldier with the Irish Guards, had gone AWOL from his battalion on the 22nd of September. Rather than serving his country during its darkest hour, Samuel had returned to his home. Less than 2 weeks later, on the 4th of October, Samuel committed his first attack. A woman named Anne McVitie reported being assaulted on the canal bank at Ford. Her attacker robbed her of a handbag, purse containing nearly £2 in cash, identity card, Macintosh, bicycle, and a bag valued at 7 shillings and 6pence. By the 30th of October, Samuel had taken refuge with his brother, Thomas Edward Morgan, who lived on Molyneux Road in Seaforth. Witnesses would later claim that from around this time they started seeing Samuel near the specific bridge where a military blockhouse was located in Waterloo, a detail that would prove crucial. The next day, on the 31st of October, Samuel showed up at his brother's home with an injury. He told his sister-in-law Mildred Morgan that he had cut his thumb on barbed wire. The wound was deep and bleeding freely. Samuel gave Mildred a field dressing, a standard military issue, and she cut a piece of gauze to apply to the wound. Later that day, she dressed the wound again in the same way, giving the remainder of the dressing back to him. On the 1st of November, Mildred once again tended to Samuel's thumb, this time adding zinc ointment to help with the healing. She handed the remaining dressing back to Morgan, but curiously, he told her to keep it. That same day, Morgan was again allegedly spotted near the bridge where the blockhouse stood. Now it's Saturday, the 2nd of November. The day began innocuously enough. At 7:30 in the morning, Samuel told his sister-in-law he was heading to Seaforth Barracks, but it wouldn't be until later that afternoon, around 4:30, he left his brother's house. Again, Mildred tightened the bandage on his thumb. Between 5:35 and 5:45, a witness would later testify to seeing Samuel reclining against railings near the blockhouse, approximately 1 hour before Mary Hagen would pass through the same area. At 6:45 p.m, Mary left her home on her errand. She had only a florin, a 2-shilling piece, and a penny in her possession. 5 minutes later, at 6:50 p.m, Mary arrived at the shop on Sandy Road, but found no papers available. Shortly after 7 p.m, she visited 2 shops on Rawston Road. At one, she spent twopence on the cigarette papers. At another, she spent a penny, halfpenny on an evening paper. This was the last time anyone would see Mary Hagen alive. By 7:10 p.m, just 25 minutes after she'd left, Mary's parents were already worried about her absence. By 7:30, her father had begun searching, checking the bridge and making inquiries at the local shops. Between 7:35 and 7:45, Samuel Morgan arrived at the Royal Hotel on Crosby Road South in Seaforth. There he met his brother Francis Morgan and his brother-in-law James Shaw. Francis immediately noticed something was wrong. Samuel was breathing heavily as if he'd been running or walking quickly. His thumb was bleeding with blood visible on his cap, and the bandage that had been on his thumb earlier was now gone. Most telling, Samuel appeared distressed. As night fell, Mary's disappearance had mobilised the community. A search party formed, including neighbours, police officers, air raid wardens and the Home Guard. At 10 p.m, while the search continued, Samuel left his mother's house. At 11 p.m, 2 men named Richard Brown and Sidney Williams decided to search the blockhouse. Half an hour later, at 11:30 p.m, they made a horrifying discovery. Mary Hagen's body had been found. The investigation team arrived quickly. Chief Inspector Gregson, head of CID, took charge, and Dr. Bradley arrived shortly after midnight and made his grim assessment. Mary had been dead for between 4 and 5 hours, placing her time of death between 7 and 8 p.m. The cause of death was strangulation. Her face and neck were bruised, and she had been raped. Later, Dr. Webster, a Home Office pathologist, performed a more thorough post-mortem, confirming death by asphyxia due to manual strangulation. He noted that there had been an attempt to muffle the girl's screams and that she had been violated immediately before her death. With Mary's body, investigators found a copy of the evening paper, 2 packets of cigarette papers, and 1 penny in her pocket. But there was one more crucial piece of evidence: a blood-stained bandage with khaki outer material and coloured gauze on the inside. Meanwhile, Samuel Morgan was on the move. The night of the murder, he travelled to Warrington, some 20 miles away. The next day, on the 3rd of November, Samuel went to Liverpool Farm School at Newtley Willows and had his thumb dressed there before spending another night in Warrington. On the 4th of November, Samuel took a bus from Warrington to Sankey and walked back to Liverpool, returning to Seaforth between 5 and 6 p.m. That evening, he stayed at his brother's house. By the 5th of November, Samuel had acquired enough money to flee. For more than a week, Samuel successfully evaded capture, but on the 13th of November, Metropolitan Police detained him in Streatham, London. His apprehension wasn't easy. Samuel had a violent struggle with the policeman. He broke away and then fell in a bomb crater, and that was when he was finally apprehended. The following day, Detective Inspector Floyd collected him from Streatham Police Station and brought him back to Seaforth. On the 15th of November, Samuel was asked to account for his movements on the day of Mary's murder. He made his first statement to the police. But then something changed overnight. On the 16th, Samuel requested to speak with Detective Inspector Floyd again and made a second handwritten statement. He wrote, "I got hold of a girl on Brookvale Bridge. She fell down. I carried her into the blockhouse and laid her on the floor." He claimed he never meant to hurt her. His reason and the circumstances for this spontaneous confession would later be hotly debated. This confession would become the centrepiece of the prosecution's case. On the 17th of November, Samuel was formally charged with the murder and violation of Mary Hagen. That same day, Superintendent Green conducted an identification parade at Seaforth Barracks. Samuel stood amongst 8 other men in battle dress. 3 witnesses picked out Samuel without hesitation, while 11 others failed to identify him. It was the 30th of November when Samuel appeared before Liverpool Magistrates' Court, charged not only with murdering Mary, but also with the earlier assault on Anne McVitie. Samuel's trial began on the 10th of February 1941 at Liverpool Assizes before Mr Justice Stable. The case against Samuel centred on three key pieces of evidence. First, his handwritten confession linking him to the scene. Second, the blood-stained bandage found near Mary's body. The prosecution contended this bandage was part of the soldier's field dressing, matching the piece of gauze Samuel had left with his sister-in-law. Crucially, Professor W.H. Roberts, Liverpool City analyst, testified that the traces of zinc compound matched exactly the dressing applied by Mildred Morgan. Third, Samuel's suspicious behaviour and movements before and after the crime, particularly the unexplained absence of the bandage when he arrived at the Royal Hotel, breathing heavily and appearing distressed. Samuel's defence team argued several points. They claimed time discrepancy made it impossible for Samuel to have committed the crime. They pointed to the lack of blood on his clothes. They questioned the bandage's origin. And most importantly, suggested his confession was made under undue influence. The judge himself noted that Samuel's statement was crucial to the case and that without it, the evidence would have been insufficient to convict. Nevertheless, after 6 days of trial, on the 17th of February 1941, the jury deliberated for just 55 minutes before returning their verdict: guilty. Despite maintaining his innocence throughout the proceedings, Samuel Morgan's appeals were unsuccessful. The Court of Criminal Appeal dismissed his case 2 weeks before his scheduled execution, and the Attorney General declined to grant an application to take the appeal to the House of Lords. On April the 9th, 1941, Samuel Morgan was executed at Walton Jail. Was justice served, or was a man condemned on circumstantial evidence during a time of national crisis when due process might have been compromised? The bandage, the crucial piece of evidence, was it truly Samuel's? Could the confession have been coerced in an era before proper safeguards for suspects? In my opinion, the confession was probably coerced. Maybe a promise was made to hand him over to the military police, which would have seen him avoid the death penalty. But I do find the bandage evidence compelling. It is such a unique link between him and the scene. I believe he was guilty. But let me know what you think. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe and let me know what you think of this case in the comments below, and I look forward to welcoming you in the next one.